Hey, it's Ken Madden here, MaddK Studio Podcast. Welcome for episode 8. It's only been about 100 years since I came in and made a podcast, and I got a very special one today. Amy Nicholls, who is an incredible artist, fine artist, and tattoo artist, also has a podcast called The Apprenticeship Diaries, and she's joining me today because she posted something the other day online that it kind of struck a chord with me, of the perfect being the enemy of the good, and how artists tend to fall in a few different camps. One being the camp of, well, I'm not going to be able to do it, so I'm not going to try, and never liking anything you do because it's never good enough. And then the other side of things is people making excuses for making crappy art, and they make up some reason why they did it like that. And I've been in both camps. So I know, Amy, you have too, and you apprentice people. So in your apprenticeship diaries, it's a whole podcast about how people got to where they were going, their journey, who they worked with, who their mentors were. And it's fantastic. And you can see it. Like I said, it's Apprenticeship Diaries. Find it everywhere. Go check it out. I don't wait till the end of this to tell everybody where to find you. But anyway, Amy Nicholls, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ken. I'm happy to be here. I was happy that I was asked, because this is a new venture, and it was like right out the gate. You were like, hey, I want to have you on the podcast. You inspired this action, which I was daring to do something. So to break it down to the listeners, I attempted. I'm already failing. I made at the beginning of November, I was like, I'm going to write about a person every single day that I have gratitude for. But that turned out to be very ambitious. I haven't even gotten past my main family. And I'm 7 days in and I only have 3 people covered. And so I'm like, okay, well, that was a bit ambitious. I really wanted these things to be good, but like right away you were like, oh my God, this is great. This is spawning an idea. Let's talk about this. And I was like, yeah, dude, like I'm happy that something that I just determined to do, because and it really makes an impact because you inspired the Inktober. I'd heard about it before that, but we did Inktober throughout all of October. And I had never done it. I had heard about it. I had other artist friends do it. And then finally doing it, it was so cathartic for me that I was like, I want another challenge. And I don't necessarily want one that is determined for me. I want to kind of utilize some things that I already wanted to do for myself. I want to write a book one day. I don't know about what. I want to do all these things. I have a Medium account that I've never used really. And I was like, I got to start writing.
And the writing you're doing is awesome. Your Medium account's great. I read the one you did with you about your brother and your little brother, and I sent it to my daughter so that she can see it, talking about, because she's got a little brother now, that they drove each other crazy. You'll like this. So they drove each other crazy. They're 7 years apart, not 3 years apart. So it's even worse.
Oh, wow.
And he was the young guy that, like, when the boyfriend would come over, he would just absolutely antagonize and not leave them two alone. Well, we thought it was great because we're like, I didn't have to worry about anything in high school.
Nothing will happen.
But anyway, she got married and they just had a baby, her and her husband, and they lived in a pretty good sized house, and they had roommates. And you know how that just never works out right. And Tucker, my son, was like, 19, ready to get the hell out of the house. Imagine living with me. I'm a dictator as a dad. And so he moved in with his sister. And we're like, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm like, well, look if he's moving out, at least he's going somewhere where he's in a safe place, right? It's not like you're renting from some weirdo you met online. And it's really worked out. I mean,
that's great.
Their relationship's a whole lot better, and we've got pictures of him holding the little baby's 4 months old, our little Sutton. And it's so your story today about your brother and your journey was, she wanted a little sister too. She didn't get a little sister. And
I had a caveat that I didn't mention. I would have been fine with an older brother, but that was already not happening.
Right. You can't. Yeah, it's hard to use the time machine. But anyway, so some of what you were posting, we were talking about that, about just through your art travels. And it really hit a chord with me because I spent a long time doing drawings of cars. I'm a car fanatic, as you know, and I could never get there. I could just never get to that point where they really looked good and they really were the way I wanted them to be. And then it happened and I got there. And it would seem like overnight. It took 20 years, but it seemed like overnight.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I get it. I know how to draw chrome. I know how to do reflections. I know how to do these things and make different materials. Because drawing cars is actually really tricky.
Oh,
And
it's very hard.
and it was like, wow, I got there. And then so I ended up having a business where I'd make $10,000-12,000 in the course of a summer, and I was selling these drawings for $150 a piece. I couldn't,
Mhm.
I mean, my dad
Yeah.
was like, you need to sell more, you need to charge more and stay on. I was like, but look how busy I am.
Right.
And it was
Yeah,
just the opposite.
exactly.
But I was in college and I'm home from summer, and I didn't have to have a job then. I'd wake up and we had a pool. So I'd jump in the pool, at the crack of 9, get up and, eat some breakfast. And by 11 o'clock, I'm drawing, and I draw all day, all afternoon, do a bunch of renderings or drawings, go to a car show that night, deliver the ones that I did that day, pick up 5 or 6 more, take pictures. And, one of the problems I had was, I could draw them out and you make the grids. So if you've seen those artists, you make a grid work, like a little
Mhm.
square and you can lay that over the picture and kind of, it's a way of copying to make sure. And I'm like, so
Yeah.
I do that, and I could get very precise and I'm like, but it takes forever.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't spend this much time. And this is the perfect being the enemy of the good, kind of how this rolls
Mhm.
into it, because you start feeling guilty about things. So I thought, well, I got a slide projector. Why don't I just take slides and I can project it, and then I can get the layout, I can get all the composition, everything dialed right in. I can get it just barely roughed in and pen in like
Yep.
20 minutes. So I started
Yep.
doing that, and that's when it really took off. And because I did that, because I took that, I'm like, okay, I can do the drawing. It just takes a while. I need to get it faster so I can sell these things. This is where it gets to be the business part of stuff. Um, I started drawing it on the pen, and then the more I did, the more of those I did, the less detail I would put in the original drawing. It was basically just a shape and some things, and then everything else I made up. And that's the way I do them still to this day.
Yeah.
I just really enjoy doing it that way. I love drawing like cartoon style stuff and that kind of thing, but the super realism, unless I'm doing like landscapes and stuff like that, I really enjoy drawing those by hand without even looking at reference material, you just dive into your mind about it. But again,
It's cool.
a year ago, in November, a year ago, I started doing acrylic painting, and you've watched the progression.
Didn't Maxwell perish? I wanted to say that. Didn't he do all of his landscapes from memory too? I'm pretty sure he did.
I think
I think
so.
he did.
And a lot of people, just did it from, well, everyone did it up until there was cameras, from just sitting there and looking at it and going, okay, there's a little
Oh
mountain.
yeah.
That's
We
white.
were out there.
Oh,
I don't think he was ever out there.
This is blue on this side. I wouldn't have thought it was blue, but we're going to try blue and see how that works.
Just go for it.
They'd squeeze some flowers into some oil that they got out of a fish that came out of the pond to make the paint, but
Mhm.
the perfect being enemy good. So like when I first got into airbrushing, I just was terrible at it. I mean, really, really bad. And my roommate at the time, who were still really good friends, we were in college, he was amazing at it. All right. So it was just one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, part of the problem was I was using a little like $25 Badger model car airbrush. And he's like, that's garbage. You're never
It's
going
not going to happen.
You need a tool.
Right.
And he had an Iwata HP. And so I bought one of those. And I remember this is like 1987, 88. That airbrush then was $150, which was every penny I earned. But I got it. I was like, wow, I can do so much better. And I had watched him do it. I've watched him do it, watched him work. He showed me how to do it. And so, I know you've had this happen. You watched it and you're in your head, you're like, I can so do this. I can't wait to try something. And you do it and it's just a disaster, epic fail. And I had one after the other until it was just repetition and trying, you just get it. No, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And even, I've had a lot of success in my life with art and being published and all kinds of fun stuff. And still, even when I got kicked in the teeth Saturday. So I'll tell you this quick story. And then I want to hear some stories about your perfect being the enemy of the good. So I did a graphic layout wrap for my son's car, my son Tucker. He's got a 2001 Volkswagen Beetle and he likes anime. So he hired an artist in Malaysia for $70 to come up with this anime.
Wow.
And it was brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, go to the anime artist for that. I'm not an anime artist. Yes, I can do it, but this guy's $70. It was
Whoa.
it was top quality. It was really cool, and he got it fast. So I took
Wow.
that, and then I went into Illustrator and the Adobe platform, and I created the layout. And I went online and bought the picture of his car that's a vector art, so I can get the sizing right and all that. Sent it to my friend, printed it all out. We're going to do an experiment with it. I'm videotaping the thing so my friend can use it for his business on how to wrap and stuff like that. And I've done this before, and but it was a complete failure. I put it on, the stuff stuck, it stretched, it ruined it. It got bubbles under it. I tried every little trick in the book, and I just couldn't get it. It was just, and then I look around my son, and he's just he's been looking forward to this for months. He's just bummed, in my
Did he
heart.
help at all with it?
Yeah, he was helping the whole time. He's all
Okay.
excited. I mean, this is a really big deal. And it really, I just, that look in his eye of just, my dad just failed at something epically,
Really?
that he was really looking forward to. And it really bummed him out. And it bummed me out too. And I
Oh,
get it, because, you're looking forward to something. And here's this guy that everything he does always just comes out amazing. So you didn't even think about that it wouldn't work.
it wouldn't work.
And I'm in there and I'm just like sweating, going, how am I going to save this? And we ended up ripping it off the car and throwing it away. And I'm printing up another one tomorrow. So I called my friend Jeff, that has a Designs by Jeff is his company. And he does, this is what he does. He does signs.
And you're like,
wraps
I'm
and
just
stuff.
gonna.
I'm like, Jeff, this was such a disaster. I mean, epic disaster. It was awful. It was as bad. It was the worst, like YouTube, TikTok fail video that I could imagine.
Aw.
But that's in my head. Actually, when we stood back and looked at it, it looked pretty good, but
Yeah.
it wasn't perfect. So we ripped it off and started over again. And
Aw.
we both learned something, like, hey, you know what? Let's leave this one to the real professionals. The fact that I've done some of it before doesn't mean I'm good at it. And being able to admit that and know when it's time to move on or get more training is a huge thing. So I guess I'll hand it over to you. And do you have an example of something that you were working on in the past, present, or something that's like, you know what? It's crippling me because it's not perfect, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like
I
to
didn't
hear
get it. I think there was like a random mosquito in here.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know how it's still alive, but sorry. If I see him again, he's dying.
Get
I'm
him.
just going to pair the listeners. I will interrupt this listening pleasure. No, I've had my whole life. It's not only the perfectionism, but a fixation on detail for me. I have very much so a thing for detail, which isn't good in all things, because even perceptively, I get caught up in the moment. I forget to step back and like really look at what's happening on a grander scale. And it's plagued me my entire life. But within the art career, like in high school, I remember one of my painting teachers. I was sitting there and we were outside and we were painting the school. I don't even know where this painting went. I wish I still had it. I don't know where it is. But she was like, "You're too precious." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she was like, "You're painting like every single brick." She's like, "You can't paint every single brick." And I was like, "Well,
sure.
I'm painting every single brick." She goes, "I know, but it doesn't make your painting better." She's like, it isn't adding anything to this painting. She's like, now if it added something to the painting, that would be one thing, but it's not adding
Right.
anything. You don't have to paint every brick to paint the building and make it look like that building and make it look really, attractive to the eye. She's like, try squinting your eyes and blurring the picture and
Sure.
kind of, having this, more. She's like, just try to match the colors. And then after you get all that in, if you feel like it needs every brick, then you can start crafting, textures that look like brick. But she's like, you shouldn't paint every brick. Like, that's not what you do. And I got really mad, like every time people gave me advice about what I was doing, I was like, you don't know what I'm doing.
It was a personal attack. Well, I was like this too. It was a personal attack on my psyche. Instead of just going, maybe you should think about it a different way. No, you obviously don't know me, and I'm trying to do what I can. And it was really the insecurity in myself that gets you that gets you. But anyway, yeah.
Well, and I found a lot of just joy in that. Like, that's the thing, is that when you're doing art, you get lost in it.
Right.
and it's our healing time, and like it's our catharsis. It's kind of like me running on a treadmill, and not counting reps like we were talking about earlier. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't like lifting weights, and being accountable for them. I just want to do something that I can kind of get into a zen with. So doing every brick was like, something that was repetitive, and made me zero in, and kind of like slowed everything down in life. And I could stay there for a while and make it last. And what she was teaching me was like, one, it would make the painting better. And two, you're going to be a professional artist if this goes the way that we're talking about. So you're not going to have time to paint every brick,
Right.
Amy. And also you don't understand how most people see things. Like you're far too in a way beyond what most people even expect from you. Like you're doing way too much, like, and you're working harder, not smarter. So it was one of those things, and it's happened my whole life. And one of the things that kind of really helped me see that was I took a sketchbook, because we would go in college to different communities around Baltimore if we had an illustration project. And sometimes we do illustrations that were about, communities, or like a feel of a community or something like that. And one of them was at this elementary school, and they wanted us to do kind of like an art piece that kind of spoke of that area of Baltimore in this particular elementary school. And I was sketching and stuff, and they were really bad. Like in my mind, they're like awful, like these are like the most chicken scratchy looking sketches. And I had more from other projects that were equally bad. And I
Yep.
had these kids looking through my sketchbook, and they were telling me exactly what each one was. Like they were telling me what I was thinking when I drew them. Like they knew what I was drawing. And I realized that these like hieroglyphics that I had made transcended for them
Right.
everything. Like
Right.
they saw it. And so I
It
was like,
connected.
oh,
It connected.
yeah,
You were able to portray. You were able to portray something even in a rough,
yeah,
pencil whip sketch. And
right.
that's one of the things that I've built a career. I've never had. I'm 53. I've had a lot of jobs and different careers in art. I've always worked in art, except for a short stint driving a forklift at a place that sold fertilizer. But there was an art to that too.
That is cool.
But as I was saying, so like every part of it was I lost my train of thought 'cause thinking about that forklift. I had to
My mom
jump.
liked driving one too. She
Yeah,
really
no,
liked it.
I actually enjoyed that. But I know what it was. It was this the sketching thing, being able to sit down. And I tell artists, I'm like, the computer's great. The person that's going to do really well on the computers is someone that understands how to just pick up a pen like this and draw
Mhm.
something out just like you did. And then it doesn't have to be good. One of the classes I had in college, he says, we're not using pencils in here because you're not allowed to erase. You have to use a pen. And like with
Mhm.
what you do in tattooing, there's no erasing. Oh, no, we got to change that. I'm sure there's times where you're looking, you're like, okay, that line didn't go where it was. So we're going to thicken this a little bit here and bring this a little around here.
Yep.
And it usually ends up being a better,
Mhm.
more natural flow to it. Cause I find that too. If I'm drawing, like if I draw a circle and the circle isn't right, cause it's never right, cause they're impossible to draw. When you go
Mhm.
back in there and start working it, all of a sudden you have this really interesting shape, and it's something
Yeah.
new that's better, but it reads as a perfect circle. And people are like,
Mhm.
wow, well, it's a circle, but it's not though. Here's a perfect circle. And you take one, put it next to it. And you're like, which one would you rather see in your wall? This circle or something that has been, really crafted? And
Yeah.
that's the difference between the computer and the hand. So,
Mhm.
I've always been able
That
to
and your
just
wrist has to like I was training my apprentice, and like the
muscle memory.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the spheres that happen when you're doing the edge of a can or something like that. Like
Yep.
there's a movement that you have to really loosen up and open up your wrist.
Right.
And when you get bigger, it has to be like your whole arm, and you have to like work it from the ball joint and things like that. Like if you're just like this all the time, and if you can make like a shape and then hold it, and then just the system creates a perfect circle for you, it doesn't it doesn't give you that connection with yourself and your body and all of those
Right.
things. I mean, yeah, you're able to make the thing itself with the tool, with the computer, but you are not connecting with that shape, which is
Right.
really nice. Yeah, and your body really, like you said, muscle memory, your body really has to connect with that. And the same thing with like we were talking, Nicole, she's been posting on I think is it Delroy is her last name? Is it Nicole
Oh, the
Delroy?
network. Yeah. She's kind of new there. She's been posting some beautiful work.
Yeah, she's got a lot of talent. And
That
she
real
posted,
classic kind of old school tattoo style that's really beautiful.
which is really hard,
Mm-hmm.
exceedingly hard, because you're using, like, I mean, if she's, I don't know if she's doing it the way like old heads are, where they're actually with pinstriping brushes, like painting all of the line work as well, but that's how the really, really old school people did it. And then, the ink washes that go over it to create the, shading and then the color. It's super hard. Like just having that white around it without a drop of ink
Right.
that leaves your brush, unexpectedly is
Exactly.
really
It gets
hard.
right there on your hand and you go,
Yes.
oh,
And the patience that you need between each step and letting it dry and all of that stuff. Like, I critiqued her in there just because I felt like there was too much white, but I was like, I don't want you to undermine how difficult what you're doing is.
right.
It's very difficult. I have the utmost respect, which is why I don't even do it. At this point, my style is fuck it. It has spatter on it now. Like, so that's what I'm going to tattoo.
Exactly.
It's going to have spatter on it. And
Mhm.
we're just going to make this a piece that has spatter.
Right.
So
Well,
that's what I just roll with my strengths.
all of creation of art is 50%, inspired work and talent and practice, and 50% covering up things that didn't go exactly the way you wanted to. I've got, behind me on the wall here, these are two experiments I was doing in they're 16 by 20 on canvas,
nice.
acrylic paintings.
It's a big
And
wall.
yeah, it's a big wall. It's actually just a foreshortened camera.
Oh, right on.
I'm only about 4 feet from it, but
Oh, damn. Okay.
like I do the drawings of cars and things like that in markers and colored pencil, and I do them in the style of like a mid-60s advertisement you'd have seen in Esquire or something like that. I just like that style, and it's really tight and solid and really, the reflections have a lot of life to them, but they're just a lot of long blends and things like that.
Right.
And then I do this painting here of my Lincoln Town Car at a sunset, and it was just all of that went out the window because I didn't know how to do it all. Because I've painted, I mean, I've airbrushed, I've drawn, I used to do oil paints quite a bit, and I hated acrylics. I did one acrylic painting in high school and never touched it again until last year in October. And I started in, and it was like, it's all I want to do now. It's like all I want to quit my job. I want to sit and paint all the time and have somebody just give me money so I don't have to like sell my house and live in a van. But working with these, this was a perfect example of perfect being the enemy of good. To get back to her, the talk was, as I started, I did a couple of some tiki guys, I'm a tiki fanatic, and and I was like, okay, I understand how this paint blend, because you have to know how the medium works. How does this blend? Does it dry fast? Does it dry slow? Is it good paint I'm using? Is it crappy paint? What's the texture going to be like? And I didn't gesso the boards the first couple of times. I just bought pre-gessoed boards. And so after that, I'm gessoing the boards, and thanks to you, now I'm actually varnishing them when I'm done. And I'm like just amazed at how much better that looks. But it's just this learning process. I've been doing this art stuff for 35 years. And I'm like a 14-year-old kid in a new art store again, just all excited about it, discovering things. And at the same time, I've got this business doing cars. I'm working on a Corvette right now for a guy that's pretty cool. That's awesome. And that's marker rendering. It's just a really cool old style drawing. But at the same time, I'm following this Michael James Smith on Instagram, who has absolutely captivated me with his oil painting, his hyper realistic oil painting. And he breaks it down and teaches it. You have those teachers you see that you're like, I get it. I see what he's doing. I don't know if I can do it, but I get it. He's doing it in oils. I'm doing it in acrylics. And I think the acrylic paints I'm using aren't quite opaque enough. So I might buy some oils that are a little more opaque, some really nice ones. So like he's doing leaves on trees, and he's doing the every brick thing like you just talked about.
Yeah.
But he's just suggesting these leaves with little dabs and like 7 different shades of green to get the different depths of shadow inside the tree with the sun shining on it, going from almost a chartreuse Tom Seast shirt like color to a dark bluish green and the way inside and everything in between. And it's just, I sit there for like 2 hours. This is my zen at the end of the night where I'm like, I'm burnt out. I got to just sit and chill out and watch YouTube videos. And I watch his videos and he's very soothing. He's got a British accent, so he talks like this. And he's just, I'm going to use this brush now. And we're going to go in there and just put these little lines in the way that but he explains the shape and everything, and why he's doing what it's doing. And for me, it resonates. And
see, when I saw it, I was like, I had a whole different playlist. It was death metal. And all I remember was me hitting by the end of this one painting, hitting the leaves into it, being like, will you just be done now?
Exact. And I'm looking at it going, all right, I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks just making this part of this tree and be like total zenning out. And this is this is how this whole show today and wanting to talk to you came about, was this conversation we had, because you're like flipping the brush around, stabbing it through to cut holes in the thing. And I'm just like, oh, how can I make, and I'd stop and I'd bring it into this room and I'd look at it in here. I'd back it off and put different lights on it. And then I'd bring it upstairs and I'd sit and put it under the lamp next to the TV. So see what it looks like on someone's wall. And I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't look good here. I got to change that. And then I go watch some more videos about, all right, how was he getting this color? What's he going, because you watch how other artists do it and you're like, wow, this is just,
I didn't
incredible.
see this or not, but does he tone his canvases before he starts? Because typically I do.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
I know some guys do, some guys. I've tried it both ways. And when I'm doing like a portrait of a pet or cat or a dog or something, I tone them. I like to have that medium mid-tone in there. But what he does is he'll go through, sometimes with acrylics, usually with oils though, and just rough in his colors. So he's not really like, like tone the canvas is when you wash it. It's for people who don't know. It's when you just kind of, you take your white canvas that you've put gesso, it's nice and smooth, it's ready to paint on, and you kind of put a wash of color on it, of a thin color, and kind of gives you a medium tone to work off the lights and the darks.
Some kind of neutral. Typically.
Yeah, some kind of neutral color, a tan or even, depending on what it is. But he, really, he brushes in, blocks in color. So he's really doing the same thing. He's putting zero detail in anything. He's just blocking in parts of color where they need to go, starting on the white canvas. And it works, because then he comes back around, it has that base. So I've been practicing this one that I've done lately, and I don't have it in here. I'll put a picture of it in the notes. But it was just a practice, and I picked a little teeny little.
It's beautiful.
Thanks. It's just a little teeny
really
little thing. And as I was going through, I blocked it like he did. And that's when I'm like, I'm not using reference material. I'm not using anything. I'm just going to use what he's teaching. So those things, and it's really starting to take shape now. I've probably got another 4 or 5 hours in it. I
really like the water edge on it. Like, I like the water, and I really like the rock and how you, because it doesn't look generic. It looks like it's a specific place, or like,
well, in the rock
have reference. Yeah.
The rock, let's just, as we were talking about before, was a complete mistake. I'm blocking in everything and blocking in colors, and I'm like, I want to have like just a little bit of a fall feel to it. And so I put some autumn colors, some ochres and some browns into that thing. And then when I came back and looked at it, I'm like, well, that looks a lot more like rocks than it does the bush that I intended. And I'm like, I'm going with it. But I'm doing these things just for pure the experience of doing them and trying to improve and constantly improve, because the reason why I was learning these foliage things is I'm working on another I'm doing a series of paintings that are hood ornaments from the 30s. You've seen the hood ornament stuff I'm doing off of Stutz, and these are gorgeous hood ornaments I saw. I'm like, I got to paint these. So the first one I did came out really cool. I was happy with it. And then the second one, I wanted to do some different foliage in the background. And that's when I found what this Michael James Smith was doing. And I'm like, oh, So instead of finishing the painting, I went down a 2-week rabbit hole of watching his videos and experimenting with this one painting. But now I'm coming back into that painting this week. So I want to try to get it done this week with everything I've learned in the last 2 weeks. And when you get to the level where you've been doing this for a long time, when you do learn something, it does click. And I still go in there and I go, I know exactly what he's doing. I can see what he's doing. He's explained what he's doing. I've got the brush, I've got the paint, I can do it, but it's still not what he's doing. You know what I mean? Because you still have to put in the time, the hours, and it's not perfect. And I get done when I'm painting, I don't know about you, but I'm right up on top of it like this. You sit back and stuff, but you are really, really detailed. And that's why I take it into a different room and look at it while I'm sitting on the couch, because you see things that you never even realized. And what I've been noticing is the stuff that when I'm in here detailing, I'm like, well, it really just still looks like crap. And I sit back and look at it and I'll bring it up. And my wife, Stacy, will look at it and be like, wow, that looks really good. And that's huge because she's like, yeah, whatever. She's seen everything and done. I mean, she's been with me for almost 30 years. She's seen everything I've done. She's like, you're fine.
You're fine.
But do you get that? Like, so like for you, and I found it interesting because you were talking about as you were in high school drawing every brick, when you go to draw every leaf on a tree, that somehow would change it. So what was there a transformation somewhere, or was it just the subject matter that would make you think that, doing one thing one way was the way you did it, and now you wouldn't want to do a similar thing? I just find that interesting.
I think I just learned the transition for me was that one, I started using a lot more wet mediums, like ink and watercolor. You have to embrace a lot more happy accidents with them, just in general. And I just started like exploring and loving a lot of different styles and looking at a lot of different types of painters. And I really loved painters who could just deliver a hit of paint, and it does so much with so minimal amount. Like, not that that's how I paint necessarily, but I love people who can deliver a lot with less. And I really like gesture drawing a lot, because they loosen you up and they kind of make you freer with your movements and very, very decisive, because you got to get it in, because whenever you're drilling figure drawing, usually there's a time. So I, through being drilled at school and having time be a factor, it makes you audit your movements a lot more. And when you have that clock in your head, you just move, you just act, and it becomes this act, react, and it's not conscious anymore. It's just you're just making movements to get it in. And so I think that's really my process now. I bounce around to get it in, and I'm getting it in until I step back and I go, oh, it's done.
It's funny how that happens.
I got it in.
I do the same. It sounds like airbrushing when I'm doing an airbrush job. It's, it's going. Oh, okay, I'm done. It's like all of a sudden you realize, I'm gonna go over here and I clean out the thing, and I'm going to get some white or some black in there and do some touch up, or I'm like, oh, I guess that's done. And I go into brush work. I have done a lot of the hand pinstriping, just the old school with the squirrel hair brush, and just do that pinstriping. Actually, I got something I'm going to send to Rico. That's something I did a while ago, and I know he'll like it. So I got to send it to him. So I need your address at some point so I can send it.
I will give it to you.
But, doing that was like, because I don't draw them out first. I just look at it. Sometimes if it's a wide hood of a car that doesn't have like a center line or anything, I'll put a really fine piece of tape down the center so I can stand back and say, okay, this is center. I need to know center, because everything I do, the way I do it is I mirror. I draw a line and mirror it. I draw a line and mirror it. I draw a line and mirror it. And I don't draw it out because I don't want it flawlessly perfect. I want someone to look at it and be like, wow, how did you do that? It's like perfectly mirrored. And I just say, no, it's not, and I'll cover up one part with my hand and I'll cover up the other side. And they're like, wow, that is, I'm like, it's actually not even close. But your eye makes the connection with the right amount of things. And it's like, how do you know when it's done? I'm like, when it looks right, then it's done. Cause you can overdo stuff too. You see it on tattoos all the time. Tattoos that have just gone way over the top. I'm like, dude, you went way too far with that, and that's going to not work. But creating all the different functions of your brain, the way that you create, different steps, and when you find when's done, when you turn it into a business, then that becomes something you have to focus on, because you have to be done when you have to be done. Right. And with most of the stuff I didn't have a real timeline. It was just kind of as long as it takes. With you do have a timeline. You have that's going to vary from person to person, because some people can handle it for 6 hours. Other people in 20 minutes are ready to pass out. And
not yet. I haven't had anybody. Well, I had one woman tell me, I had one woman tell me after one line, she was like, nope. And I was like, what? She goes, I can't do this. And I said, you have a line. She goes, yep. And that's my new tattoo. I was like, wow, okay. Wow. I mean, I've never had like, most people can pluck along for like an hour and a half. I have one woman that like an hour and a half is like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, man, she's like, I hate getting tattooed. She's like covered.
Right. That hates the process, loves the final part.
The biggest thing with me is the perfectionism mixed with the performance, because you are there with another human being who you have to weigh their expectations along with what you're doing at any given point. And when you're learning, you might not entirely know what you're doing. So there is that like imposter behind you that's constantly being like, you shouldn't even be doing this. Meanwhile, you're putting a permanent fixture on someone. And then the aftermath of that, which, when you're, I don't know if, I'm sure you've experienced this. It probably was like the rap, when you were doing the rap, when you're doing it and you're just sweating bullets, like you said, and you're so in it that like you're seeing every imperfection, and it's taking hours and hours and hours, and you're just dying inside. And then when it's over, you're like, oh God, I fucked it up so bad. It's so bad. But then when it heals, when it comes back and you're not in that moment anymore, and you're able to actually assess what was there, most of the time, it's not all the time, most of the time, with either myself, my apprentices, or whatever, they're like, oh, it really wasn't that bad. I'm like, no, it really wasn't that bad. You just, you were in your head, like damning yourself as you were taking every single movement. And it was just getting more and more tense. And typically, if you're like that on a piece of paper, or, not trying to do something for your kid, you can walk away. Right. Like you can just walk away and be like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I have to stop. I have to walk away. I have to give myself a minute, maybe eat something that makes me feel good, and then come back.
But if there's that point of no return, and you have, with most of what I'm doing, I can sit there alone and do it in my studio. I don't have someone looking over my head. But I did for years when I was pinstriping cars and doing that. I had a business where I'd drive around and I'd go to people's homes and pinstripe their car, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll bet.
They're always standing right there. They're always standing right there, and you screw stuff up sometimes. I was at a car show, and this was in the 90s, and the guy wanted me to paint cruising, the little fleur-de-lis and some pinstripe, and then write the word cruising on the back. I think it was a 57 Chevy, white. And so I did the one side and came around, and I was doing the other side, and I got done with writing out the word cruising, and he looked at it and he goes, that's not right. And I said, oh, right. Well, I forgot to put the I in it. So it just said cruising.
Cruising.
And I'm out there in the show. It's 85 degrees out, and I'm using one-shot sign painter's enamel, which is awesome because you can wipe it off. And we went and looked at the other side, and I did the same thing on the other side. Now he was standing there. Now this was one of those things. I was mortified. I'm like, I'm wiping it off, and I'm not getting paid for this, and I got to go away. When he realized that he stood there the whole time and didn't catch it either until I was done with the second side, he thought that he
blamed himself.
He thought that was the funny thing in the world. And I'm like, there's no excuse for it, but I had to like swallow all that and be like, I'm really sorry. I said, this was my mistake. And, obviously, but it cost me because I had to do the whole job again. I had to wipe that off.
And FYI, people, like when you're drawing letters, you're not spelling.
Right. That's different. It's different.
It's different. It's like you almost have to have it drawn out written out in front of you to call upon that kind of recall. Because when you're in it, I've done it with birthday, I've done birthday, I've done, I've done it with a lot. My mom's like, what is this? And I'm like, you don't understand how my brain works. I think it's a mild to dyslexia or something like that. A lot of creatives have it, but a certain part of our brain like turns off while we're doing what we do. And that's a very common one, which is why I try not to do a lot of lettering unless, I mean, I've had the same thing. I had a client, it was an Edgar Allan Poe quote and it had exquisite in it, but I missed the Q in exquisite. And we had gotten
that's the letter. That's the letter that makes that whole word, and you can leave it out and not even see it. I've done it. I've done it.
Well, and I swear to God that I copied and pasted exactly what he had given me, like in his email. I sent him 2 different proofs because we had to fix it. We got it on him. He looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
We tattooed it. It didn't get caught until he got home, and his wife looked at it and she goes, the Q's missing in exquisite. And he's like, what? He calls me.
What did you do?
Fortunately, the thing of it is the style that I recently posted, Trash Polka.
Yeah.
It was a Trash Polka design. And the beautiful thing about it is that exquisite was actually in a part of the tattoo where it was meant to be a negative. So I had outlined it only in like the lightest gray wash. It was meant to be surrounded by black. So because it hadn't been black, like put in there with black, I was able to scoot the letter over and put it in a Q and then just fill the rest in with black. And then we just put like a little bit of white over where like the little bit of like gray wash line still was there. Totally was able to fix it. And I was like, dude, you are so lucky that this happened this way. And I'm so lucky that this happened this way.
Because you wouldn't have caught the black. You wouldn't have caught the misspelling in the black either. I wouldn't have. I'm in the same way. I mean, when
neither one of us did. He was laughing about it because he was like, dude, I needed my wife to tell me.
Right.
But I was like, we couldn't have messed that up. It was an Edgar Allan Poe quote. You can't be walking around with a misquoted Edgar Allan Poe.
That reminds me of a funny tattoo story from a movie the movie was it's called Masters of Menace, and it was a biker film, and it was just one of those all the B actors got in it too. So it was like Dan Aykroyd, John Candy was in it, Lenny or Squiggy from Lenny and Squiggy, Jim Belushi, and you can't find it anywhere. It's a real obscure little.
I haven't seen it
in the late 80s, but it's a biker film. It's just about, it's like Easy Rider, but it like is like Easy Rider it meets Smokey and the Bandit or something. It's just
that's hilarious.
It's a goofy comedy movie. But one of the parts is sitting there and the guy's talking to the girl and he's, getting her all impressed and he's showing her his tattoos. And she's like, what? I think they're riding on, they're just sitting around. She doesn't even like a shirt on or anything. And she's like, oh, what's that mean there on your shirt? He goes, which one? And she goes, the one that says South Cadota. And he goes, South Cadota? It's supposed to be North Cadota. Cadota.
Cadota.
But it was great the way you did it because I didn't even see it either. And because I'm so freaking dyslexic, I don't notice that stuff, but it's one of the funniest tattoo kind of things I've ever seen in a movie where someone's just like, yep, they mess up sometimes. And he didn't even realize it till, way down the road. But yeah, so Masters of Menace, if you want to waste 2 hours getting dumber,
I have to check that out.
You'll laugh your ass off because it's funny.
I mean, I've done a lot of things that did that, so wouldn't be atypical for me. Masters of Menace. I'm gonna look that up.
So also,
sounds fun.
I want to, we're coming on an hour here. And I want to wrap it up a little bit. But first of all, what would you have for advice for, say, an artist that maybe not so much as a beginner artist, but someone that's been, maybe they've gone through art school and they're starting to get into their career, whether it be, you're not just a tattoo artist. It's one of the reasons that I really, really have a lot of respect for what you do. Not that someone's just a tattoo artist is anything bad about that, but you also have a fine arts degree. You're a fine artist first that ended up doing tattoos as your chosen medium, which I think is brilliant. So I'm tapping into your vast knowledge of art. is what I'm doing here to say, what would you give for some advice of someone trying to break into some sort of art business, whether it be tattoos or painting or, what say you?
Well, first, I clarify, I'm a dropout. So I got 3 years in and then I gave up on my bachelor's. So first line of thing is that if you are a person who's getting more art jobs offered to you and you can't do them because of your homework, you might want to reevaluate. So that's what happened to me. And I was like, what am I doing here? I can't do art. Right. I can't do art jobs because I have too much art homework. So that's one thing. It maybe just do it. I've met a lot of people that are not formally trained that just started making art. In fact, one of our apprentices at the old studio I worked at, that was her story. She really loved a certain style of tattoo kind of art and started just doing it and made her own style out of just doing the style over and over again and like playing with all of the images and shapes, and it's stunning. And she just really kept it clean, kept it beautiful, had an amazing portfolio. But I think the biggest thing, especially now, is that you can't be afraid to be seen. That's the big thing. I mean, for me, and this was about the writing that you had seen too, is that the first person that I talked about was my mom, because she imbued the critic in me. And the critic is a wonderful thing, but it's also something that can be paralyzing if you're not careful.
Right.
But because I grew up with the critic and because it kind of trained me to keep pushing to a lot, and knowing that it was fine to not be perfect in some ways, that it was just better just keep going and get better and better and better. But you can't be so critical of yourself that you're not willing to be seen, because art isn't art if it's not on a wall. It's just tucked in a notebook somewhere and nobody sees it, and it won't do anything for you if you don't put it out there and you're not willing to risk people telling you about it. So take the hit and put yourself around a lot of other creatives and ask a lot of questions, and just like we said earlier, try not to take it personally. It's not a personal assault on you. It's heading towards something that you ultimately want to do, which ultimately will not be about you.
What I learned in art school was how to take critiques.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone says they just don't like it and don't give me an idea why, their opinion doesn't mean anything to me. Sorry. It doesn't mean anything to me, because I asked, well, why don't you like it? I don't know. I just don't like it. All right. Well, this art ain't for you. Thanks for stopping by.
Right.
But someone that says, it looks like, the way the sky is, I'm not seeing that as being this time of day or something like that. I'm like, all right, let me think about it. Take the critique for what it is, just a critique of what you're doing. They may be wrong, but take it and don't live and die by it, but take it and say, all right, let's really kind of jump in their heads and see what go down that road a little bit, maybe do another piece that tries what they're experimenting with. That's what I'm doing I stopped painting I was in the middle of, because I wanted to try something that I saw and improve it. And that's my biggest advice for people. I think you and me are on the same page as that is, you need to be out there. You need to be seen. You need to be able to be shown that what you're doing isn't good enough or is good enough.
Yeah.
Or
you'll
where
never
it's
know.
good enough. Because, the New York Museum of Art probably won't have a picture of a Porsche that I'm doing in there anytime soon, but it's certainly good enough to hang in the Peterson Museum in of California. So it's just a matter of scale and what you're doing and where you're at. But keep pushing, keep doing it. Anytime you can get work to be an artist, I think every job you get teaches you something. Sometimes I take the ones that I don't want to do just to put myself through the practice of saying, I'm going to create something, even though this isn't something I really want to do, and grow with it. And every time I do that, something great comes out of it. I mean, there's a breakthrough, there's something. And even as long as I've been doing it, there's still breakthroughs. And I want more and more. My dad is 90 years old, and he just went to Boston to WGBH Channel 2 in Boston with an 18-piece big band to record an album full of compositions that he's, arrangements, musical arrangements, big band jazz stuff that he did, with the best musicians in the Boston area. I mean, the guy that was doing the conducting for it, he used to be first trumpet in the Buddy Rich band. I mean, this is the level of people that are doing that. I can't wait to hear this recording.
Oh, I'm sure it's incredible.
So,
but he's still pushing.
He's still pushing 90. Yeah. He's pushing the envelope, and he's really doing something, and he's doing what he wants. And I see that. And that's my inspiration.
Oh yeah.
To just keep going and keep getting better and meet new people. You and I met on the Nomad Network. That's a network that Jason Stapleton from the podcast Wealth, Power, and Influence put together. And boy, we've met some great people in there. I mean, you and me have become great friends that have never met. And we've got Carol LeBaron on there, who's another just absolutely inspiring artist.
She's incredible.
And then now we've got more new artists coming on. I just did, like I said, we talked about a little bit earlier. I did an interview with somebody last night about 3D printing and the other side of my brain and the other side of my world. And
I'm interested in it too. I have a lot of ideas for things that could be really cool, 3D printed items. But one thing at a time. We got podcasts,
exactly. Exactly.
I mean, talk about perfection. I mean, getting a podcast out when you feel super, super intimidated by technology all the time. I mean, right before we started, there was a little bit of a technical thing.
Yeah,
so
on my end. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it constantly happens. And that's the other thing, is that I think that it's just life, guys. Like, all of life is it's a lesson in control. And the more you do it, the more you realize that the reality is, it's not what you can control. It's how you control yourself and how you react to those things. And that's what really makes you the kind of person.
And it affects us all. It affects us all. The reason why I wanted you to do this podcast with me as my first podcast, again, starting out, I did 7 episodes through last February. And I was spending 11, 12 hours on them, editing and putting in photographs and doing all this in music. And I was trying to make these beautiful, perfect things. And I did it all for nothing. I mean, I think the most watched one got 40 views. And so they weren't doing what I was doing. I'm like, why am I messing around? Because Amy had me on her podcast, which I was really happy with. And it was one of the breakthrough moments for me where I'm like, I can come on here with you and we can just talk. I don't have any notes. We didn't plan it. We spoke for a minute or two before the thing. This is what you want to talk about. Well, this. And honestly, Amy and me both know we could sit here till 3 a.m, and go for another 4 hours, but we won't. We'll spare you that. We'll do another episode.
Yeah, we can do another one.
but I really appreciate you coming on and giving some insights into this, and go and check out everything. So why don't you give all the links and places you are and what you want people to see and all that kind of stuff.
Well, if you'd like to work with me in terms of tattooing, I take requests through my website, which is www.anichollstattoos.com. And I have a contact sheet through there. So I take all my requests directly through there. And I take forever to get back to you. So please be prepared for a wait. Most of my clients wait a year, if not more. I'm just one person. That's how that goes. And I'm sorry. I wish I could be more. But my podcast, you can catch at the_apprenticeship_diaries on Instagram. We're also on Twitter, where we also have a Facebook page. I also have my own private studio. So if you'd like to, follow the studio page, it's Beyond the Pale Art Studio on Instagram. And then on Instagram, I'm A Nicholls Tattoos, and it's ANICHOLLS TATTOOS. So that's where you can, you can Google me, you'll see my art, you'll see, though there is still a girl that competes with me who got eaten by a small caiman.
Really?
Or something. Her name's Amy Nicholls. She keeps competing for me on Google for some spot. I think her death warrants a little homage, but yeah, she keeps competing with me.
Well, we'll have links to correct places, and maybe that one too. That sounds interesting and horrifying. At
She's
the same
cute.
time.
She's beautiful. I was so upset, but I was like, come on, man.
Oh,
Will I never rise?
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. And I've got I had an idea I want to talk to you about for a minute too. So when we're done, so everyone that's listening to this will have to wait till hear about what this little plan is. So anyway, I'm Ken Madden. This has been the MaddK Studio Show, and I really appreciate episode 8 and Amy getting me back on track. God bless you, and we will talk to you guys later.
Bye, everyone.